Welcome to the Guidelines Podcast, a once every 2 weeks discussion about applying user-centered design within South Africa. My name is Jonathan Copeland, and on this episode of Guidelines, I sit down with UX researcher as well as co-founder and co-director of Monkey and River, Jacques Brosens. With experience ranging from software development to business and user research backed by academia, Jacques has valuable insights on what it looks like to apply user-centered design at every stage of a product's lifecycle. We met up at his office at the University of Pretoria and spoke about his journey from studying software development to learning about and then researching user-centered design. Our conversation covers the outcome of his master's research, approaching user-centered design as a process instead of just as a deliverable. Enjoy. So when I started to first research user experience design, I started to see who within Pretoria was working in our industry. There were a couple of names that came up. And within Pretoria, within Tux, I specifically came across Helene Gelderblom, Rendani Kruger, and Jacques Brosens. And it's been such a pleasure to get to know you over the last period of years. I started to get to know Jacques and Rendani in 2017 and ended up starting to work at their startup, Monkey and River. We'll get to that later. But it's been a really cool process of getting to know you and getting to work with you. Would you tell us who you are, what you've been working on, and some of that?
Yeah, so I started out at the University of Pretoria studying a degree called BIT, Bachelor of IT, which basically combines computer science, so programming background, informatics, which is sort of the application of technology in business, and information science, which has two legs, the sort of multimedia aspect that you're familiar with, but that's sort of your how do you use different forms and different channels to interact digitally with users, such as gaming and other forms as well. Yeah. And then there's the information science leg, which is knowledge management, information management, and the importance knowledge plays within organizations. So that was really my background. Given that the programming, the technical stuff was the hardest part, I would say. A person tended to focus a lot on that. So Rendani and I studied the same degree. We studied together. We became friends in second year, where we were, in the trenches with
shared trauma.
Exactly. And so we really come from a programming background. We software developers. Our company started as a software development company, but in our honors, so BIT is sort of your typical 3-year degree, but then included in that is a 4th year where you do elective honors modules and 6 months of industry-based training. So at the time we had finished our 3rd year and we had to choose modules for our honors. And back then there were obvious picks, which was the software development type stuff that Rendani and I were into, and then there were a few open spots, and we basically closed our eyes and selected a few, put our finger down on a paper and see what turned up. And there's one module was INF 790 Capita Selector. It didn't even say what the module was. So, okay, let's do it. Let's see what we get. What it turned out to be was a course on human-computer interaction, where the same Helene Gelderblom was presenting the course, and through the through the course of that module, Helene basically, typical. There's this charisma about her, but also this true authenticity, where she clearly explained to us what the benefits are of having empathy when you develop technology. Sure. And we did the assignments and so on, but we were more bought over by the the philosophy behind that module. You know, there were the methods and there were the constructs and all these things, but the philosophy behind it. And we were just sold over immediately, and we knew that this is, we weren't going to be very good at it immediately, and we still have a far way to go. And neither Indani and I were creatives, you know, we weren't very artistic type people. But we knew that whenever we sat down and tried to develop technology, we needed to start following these principles and make sure that the technology wasn't only usable, but, you know, thinking about the emotions being evoked when you develop technology. So that's how we got into user-centered design, and that's what I studied. I went on to do my master's, where I focused on user-centered design and user experience. And I'm currently busy with my PhD, where I'm still looking into user experience.
Sure. You know, I find so interesting about UX is it's very seldom a direct path into it. I don't know of any UX specific degrees, but you have people coming in from BAs, you have people coming in from computer science, from information science, all of these different fields where people kind of get funneled into it.
Yeah. I agree with you. So we, I've heard people coming from all kinds of backgrounds, you know, and there's this demand in the industry now, but maybe partially because of this hype around UX, but also just a lack of you know, enough skill out there.
Yeah.
So people are realizing that there is this demand out there and pivoting their careers towards it. We are actually looking in this university to establish a degree. We just had a chat with Dr. Maria Attained a few weeks ago, where we've got a pathway now to establish a degree specific for human-computer interaction and user-centered design.
Sure.
So we'll pursue that, and probably by 2020, 2021 latest, we'll have it should be the first you know, undergraduate degree focused on delivering UX designers. So we're really excited about that, and that's going to sort of combine subjects in psychology, you know, so cognitive psychology. It's going to combine information design modules. It's going to combine informatics, programming, and a bit of business and marketing. So all that in one degree, I think, is going to be really interesting. I wish I was a bit younger and I could do that degree. But
I think it's that's going to be incredible when it comes out. What's your involvement going to be in it when it's out?
Right, so we're a team of, I would say, 4 people. That 4 people that kind of we have this lab downstairs, which was at the University of Pretoria. Called the Informatics Design Labs. One of the labs we have there is the User Experience Lab. We've built, it was started by Helene Gelderblom a few years ago. Sadly, she passed away. It's been taken over by Prof. Hanley Smits, who's absolutely remarkable when it comes to, you know, strategizing, organizing, and just, you know, getting things done. You know, getting people together, organized, assigning roles, and, you know, just meeting, you know, taking steps forward, instead of it just being an idea that always remains an idea. So that's really been, you know, amazing what she's brought in, and how she's pushed us to move forward. What we've done is created the strategy for the lab, and our broad mission is just to create awareness, especially with young information technology students, that you can't just go out there and build these state-of-the-art technologies. You need to have the human aspect involved as well. You need to have empathy and think about it's not just how cool the technology is and what functions it can perform. It's also about how people actually use it and what impact it makes. So that's the broad outline of, so it involves research output, it involves interacting with industry. We want to work with industry so that we can learn and they can learn from us. So the methods we try to use, we try to make sure it's based on science. It's not based on what we think is best, on our opinion, but on, you know, proven methods. But we trying to bring that to industry, but at the same time have access to industry so that we can also learn and improve the way we work. So this degree forms a very important part of that sort of vision, where we need to be able to, as a university, put people in industry that bring this skill set, that practically understand how to go about systematically, coherently designing technology in such a way that it will evoke positive responses from users and actually meet their needs. Okay. So our goal, our role will be to answer your question finally, is to coordinate the modules, so to decide what goes in the degree, what doesn't go in the degree, who gets involved, maybe to present a few of the modules in the course as well.
Okay, so whilst you're preparing for this, you're busy. You're a PhD candidate at the moment. You've done your masters and you're busy lecturing at Tux. Correct. Would you be able to tell us about what you're lecturing at Tux, and then about some of your masters, and then we can maybe get to some of your business work afterwards?
Sure. So what we're lecturing at the moment is advanced programming on a second and third year level in the informatics department. We just redid the syllabus for the department to make sure it's sort of in line with what industry needs. As I said, we're still very much into the software development space.
That's what I love so much about UX. You can come at it from so many different perspectives. Right. You've come in very much from a software development perspective.
So we find that's something we haven't encountered a lot of. You wouldn't find, perhaps your experience is different, but what we've experienced is that there aren't really that many developers that buy into this UX thing. You've heard all the sayings that UX is making the screen pretty. It's all about user interface.
Basically, fancy UI.
Exactly, and we've got a completely different view of it. We feel that the developer developing an algorithm there in the background has such a big impact on user experience, and developers need to understand the impact that their code has on the user, and it's not just about getting it working.
Can I quickly interject? Something that you hit home about, and what I've always remembered about what you said, is you spoke about UX as a process. You've almost touched on this now, what you were saying about with the programming, but what is your view on not just UX, like applying it, but the process of UX?
Yeah. So my view of, if you look at user experience, to just become a bit academic here, so user experience in the end is a result. It's a sort of vision that you want to achieve, it's an outcome. So you can leave that up to chance and say, okay, I'm going to develop a piece of software, I'm going to put it out there. I may or may not care about the aesthetics of it, but in any case, I'm going to put it out there and let's see how people react to it. And very often what happens is you put it out there, your assumptions that you had when you built this technology were most likely flawed because your frame of reference was completely misaligned with the frame of reference of the users, and that the result that comes out of that is frustrated users. So UX is a result, right? The process we're talking about is how to orchestrate that experience. So there are many aspects of user experience that you don't have any control over. So you don't necessarily have control over making sure that all the users that use your technology have exactly the same background, socioeconomic circumstances, training, whatever. You don't always have control over all of that, or sometimes even influence over any of that. But what you can do is to understand what users are going to be using your technology. So that's the first aspect of user experience, is that understanding perspective. So that part where you do research to understand who your users are, understand what their needs are, what their wants are, what their expectations are, to understand what the real problems are. So that's that research type role of UX. Then you need to be able to analyze that problem and find a solution. So you have this generative process, which is the UX design. So typically what you find in any career website, recruitment websites, if you type in UX, 90% of the jobs being called for are UX designers, and what the role entails is essentially designing screens. But if we just use an example, if you're interacting with a simple mobile app that has a very specific purpose, so a panic button app, for example, so you're in a difficult situation, maybe there's a crime going on and you need to hit the panic button. How much of that really has to do with aesthetics of that user experience? How much of that is about the responsiveness of the actual application, as in the infrastructure that supports the pressing of that button, how quickly your app can load up, how quickly the ecosystem that supports whatever happens after you press that button, how quickly that responds, and how quickly or how that app allows you to manage your stress in that situation. So you have all these examples of where UX is not just about aesthetics, it's about the entire package, like the speed of your server, the efficiency of your algorithm, the architecture of your software, the reliability of your software, the level of that you trust the software. So you're putting in credit card details or location or whatever into the software. All of that affects the experience, because experience is a perception that happens in the mind of the user. So my view of UX is this research part where you understand, this analytical part where you sort of decompose the as-is state into its bare atomic parts, and coming up with a solution that can solve that problem. So there's this creative part to it, and again the analyst part to test. So it's not just about the design.
Sure.
And that's why I feel myself, I'm not a very necessarily artistic, or I wouldn't put myself out there as a UX designer. I'm far more of an analyst, but I still feel, and a developer, but I still feel I have a very important role to play in the UX space. Sure. And that's something I've felt that industry hasn't always necessarily got right.
Rather, industry can often view it as being just an aesthetic thing, but actually it's more of a process thing. Okay, that's interesting. We were talking about your lecturing and how that you lecture at Tux, and then how that's led to you doing masters.
Yeah. So the lecturing is more sort of my passion is around my research, which is user-centered design for the sake of improved UX across different industries, different technological applications. My lecturing is sort of a thing that the university needs me to provide that service, and if I'm able to fill that gap by lecturing, then it allows me to also work on my research. So like I mentioned, the interesting part is how the programming background has actually provided me the opportunity to provide an alternative view of UX instead of the typical view you would find of UX out there.
Okay.
Yeah. So my masters, my masters was under Prof. Leon again. It was a natural choice out of honors. We just wanted to continue. We wanted to know more about the space. So my masters looked at. I had this, I was completely convinced after my honors that the value of user-centered design for business was so obvious to me. I guess it was the way it was taught to us, that I was struggling to understand why this didn't gain the traction that I thought it should gain in industry. And so I had this question of what were the things hindering the application of UX in industry, the adoption of UX in industry. Besides the point that it was business value, I think it's also the responsible thing to do. It's in a society where digital isn't just an extension of ourselves, but it shapes our reality to a large extent. We need to think about what the ethical responsibilities are of those that develop technology. And I needed to understand why industry wasn't taking this more seriously. So what I did was I went out to interview 6 project managers. So I didn't want to interview UX people that necessarily had already bought into UX. I wanted to interview perhaps whether they bought into it or not. I wanted to see, but it was kind of agnostic to UX perhaps. So I would go to 6 large enterprises in South Africa from 6 completely different industries, and basically just have interviews with them to find out what they think, what their understanding is of UX, which was interesting because not everyone had the same understanding about UX, and then what they perceived as the benefits of UX, but also what they perceived as the hindrances of UX. And everyone that's read up on UX would know some of the basic findings, that you need executive buy-in, that there's just not enough time, and UX is perceived as a nice to have because, at the bottom line, the reason people adopt technology is to attain some sort of value, so usefulness. I need to achieve my task. I need to achieve my tasks, so I adopt this tool because it will help me achieve my tasks. So now you've got this move towards agile. We've got your 2-week sprints, and the idea is get features out, hit your deadline. One project manager told me about this, had this anecdote where he said that CEO, the executives had I think the marketing team had booked out they were launching a big product, and they were busy working on a big product, and the marketing team had booked out a full-page ad in one of the top newspapers in the country saying that next Sunday this product is launching, and these people were sitting back there thinking like we have so much work to do. I can't imagine that we're going to be ready by next week Sunday, but now that full-page ad is out there, we have to deliver by next week Sunday. And for that reason, UX is naturally not part of something that's added to the process. But what I found really, what my key finding was out of my master's, I felt, was actually the view of UX in totality. The view of UX was very much an add-on skill set that you need in the project environment, where you do everything that you would normally do, and then you add UX on at the end to kind of...
It's like a piece of Lego that you just
slot in. Okay. Where my view of UX was, in fact, it was a bit of a paradigm shift. So my view of UX was that your whole approach changes from the very start.
Yes.
So your goal is UX. Your goal isn't delivering quantity of features, your goal is rather delivering quality of experience.
Sure.
So having that and there's a very good business justification for that paradigm shift, purely because what drives customer loyalty isn't necessarily always having the feature available. In many cases, it's rather the emotional attachments people, and there's lots of research that points to that, is that the emotional attachment that people form with products, and therefore they build this loyalty, and over time the return on investment is enormous, and we've seen that in the work we've done. It's really been small little changes in the way teams have done things. The return on that has been amazing, and the problem with UX is just that the return is intangible. Customer loyalty is something you see over a period of time. It's not something that you tweak your approach now and you immediately get the benefits same day. It takes a bit of time. So what my fundamental finding was that this quantity was prioritized over quality, and basically the reason for that was software teams or technology development teams tend to offer a service of some sort to these large organizations. So you have business representatives that are in charge of making sure the business makes more money, or reduce costs. So, that profit motive that the business has, and the product development team is there to service business. So business says, hey, we know what our customers want. They want the following. And the product development team needs to say, oh, okay, let's go away, develop this little technology, deliver it according to the time, budget, and requirements that the business people have requested or specified. What I found was business people, because of not understanding the value of UX and perhaps not even being aware of UX, business people, not technology people, weren't aware of UX. So they never, as part of their agreement or, sort of call it a service level agreement, or their expectations towards these product development teams, they never mention UX. It's never a part of the equation of working out whether a project was successful or not. The only way they determined project success was it was delivered or it wasn't delivered from the product team's perspective. So they would develop something, and if they delivered it before the specified date and within the budget, they would see it was successful. They would all get their bonuses. The team would be praised and tapping each other on the back. But to me, it didn't make any sense that that's the definition of success, because if you ship a product and no one can use that product, how can that be declared? So that would maybe be defined as a failure for the business as a whole, but somewhere, if you look in the track record of the product development team, they would put that down as a success, even though the product out there failed.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So that was something I felt needed to change in business, where business people, even though they're not part of the technology space, because so many of their products that they ship, channels that they interact with customers are digital. And by the way, user-centered design doesn't only need to apply to digital. It can be applied to services. It can be applied to any interaction with your customer. But specifically around technology, business had to take accountability and demand from their product development teams that user experience be part of the equation.
Okay.
We demand from our team follow a user-centered approach, because that will benefit us in the long run.
Something that I'd just like to clarify. It seems like the traditional view, as you said, the traditional view on UX is like we have our different roles. So we have the development, we have all that kind of thing, but then we put UX on top of that.
Yeah.
You're suggesting that business is the process through which we do that.
Sure.
Now, a lot of times the issue that people have with, the business people will have with putting UX in, is they have to almost find budget and find time to put something new on top of it. You're suggesting that the way that it's actually gone about from start to finish is through a UX perspective. Sure. How would you, then you're not spending more.
Yeah.
You're actually just changing your processes.
Right.
I think that's a big distinction to make.
Sure.
UX does not require a whole lot more budget.
No.
And I think that would be a blocking factor for a lot of people,
Sure.
thinking that they have to add in more budget.
Agreed. So I've got two responses to that. The first thing is, let's assume UX was just an add-on, and UX did require more resources and budget and
Yes.
so on. My argument with that is it's still worth that initial investment, because you, in the long run, make that money back, tenfold. In the sense that you gain customer loyalty, you reduce the number of errors you expose users to, which reduces costs to your call centers. Although all those arguments have been had. But like you said, it doesn't necessarily even need to cost you so much more. And the reason for that is it's if you can modify your approach. So I'm starting to play with these concepts of user-centered developers, user-centered business analysts, user-centered testing, which simply means your approach is to involve user representatives. Just spend a little bit more time up front, which is time you'll save at the end in any case, to get to know your users. And by doing that and involving your entire multidisciplinary team up front, getting to understand the users, you save a lot of effort down the line. there's this idea that everything used to be waterfall, your development methodologies, which was this plan heavy 2-year run up to a project with documentation to the ceiling, and once something is signed off, it never goes back, with that type of thing, where you need to get change your request and so on. Then you went full agile, which is all changes welcome, but sort of ultra flexibility. But we don't have time to plan, we don't have time to design, it's just jump in and code. I feel like there's a user-centered design process somewhere in between, where we can spend a little bit, maybe one sprint up front to understand our users and do initial design. So there are agile user-centered design methodologies that have been proposed and applied and work very well, where you've got a team of UX analysts and designers that work concurrently with your team of developers. They just work a sprint ahead of your developers. And then a more recent proposal was to have a third stream, which could be cross-domain team of researchers. So you've got a stream that's purely there to know the customer. You've got a stream there that's there to sort of bridge the gap between the stream that knows the customer and the development stream. So they come understand the users, come up with the designs, provide the designs with the developers. The developers develop, and the analysts test as the developers finish features. So you've got this methodology that at the end of the day delivers at most 2 weeks later than standard methodologies that you find out there today, but deliver a far better experience at the end of the day. And the current methodologies seem to, on paper, deliver earlier. I mean, the product ships earlier, but how much do you spend to go and rework where things are shipped and just don't work?
Rather get it right the first time.
Yeah, to me, it's just a no-brainer. There are ways that you can incorporate user-centered design in cost-effective ways, but it requires you to rethink your entire process from start to finish, not just hiring in a UX designer and saying, hey, we need the following screens, go and design them for us, please.
Okay. So your master's was looking at multiple different industries, multiple different project managers, and asking them their thoughts on UX. Right. What was your, the overall feedback that you got?
Yeah. So my overall feedback was business people needed to demand from project development teams that UX be a success measure, a metric of success for the project. So project success would not be, or a project would not be deemed successful if the quality of experience was bad.
And that's what we're aiming for.
That's, in my opinion, my next step is to try and aim for that, try and I think it's going to be a process. It's not going to be overnight, but I think in a world where you've got an ocean of competitors and solutions coming out, where today you can ship something, but tomorrow some people can, overnight you can see a similar app coming out that competes with you. You cannot necessarily compete in the sense that you're the first one out anymore. You need to compete on ensuring that your customers appreciate what you've put out there for them.
Okay, so just to clarify what you're getting across with Masters, it was when speaking with people in business, you need to communicate the business benefits of UX. Okay, not just as something to be tacked onto the process, but a way of handling it from start to finish, to have a deliverable output of users being able to use something and have it as a return experience, so they want to keep coming back to it. Is that how you'd sum it up?
I agree, yeah.
Okay.
So, but I don't want to make it sound necessarily that it's this complete, if you've got your current methodologies in place, you won't have to throw all of that out of the window. You can reconfigure that to simply be user-centered. Okay. So you have a few more, you upskill the people being user-centered is something that's within us all.
Okay.
It's, we can configure our minds to not assume that we are the users, but to understand, put ourselves in the user's shoes. Developers can do that just as much as business analysts, just as much as testers,
Yes.
just as much as project managers.
Okay.
So that it's just a reconfiguration, adding on a few extra perhaps skill sets in the sense that you have your designers and so on to add on to the team. But I really think it's a simple reconfiguration of your methodology and an education, awareness on a business level that we as a business demand user experience.
Okay.
It shouldn't be left up to the product development team.
It becomes the culture.
Yeah. If it's left up to the product development team, they will choose the shortest path, because if they get told you have to deliver the following hundreds of features before some crazy deadline, they will throw out of the window the things that weren't explicitly asked of them.
Okay.
So if a business does not explicitly expect UX from a product, then the product development team will not deliver that.
Okay.
And that's the fundamental finding.
Okay, that's very useful. Well, let's talk about business. I'd like to start talking about Monkey and River.
Sure.
So you are a founder and co-director of Monkey and River, that's correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, could you tell us more about Monkey and River?
Yeah.
How long you've been around, what your offerings are?
So we founded Monkey and River in 2015. It started out purely as a software development company, and we still are. We still develop that, develop software. We develop bespoke software solutions, so people tell us what their requirements are, and we build custom solutions. We sort of target the smaller to medium business space. So, we try and offer affordable technology solutions, but then through our research, we have to practice what we preach. So through our research, we've pivoted over time towards a user-centered software development, design and development house. So we offer our UX services, testing solutions. We a part of my PhD, which I've already worked out a instrument to audit solutions or ecosystems for the user experience it evokes. And so these are the types of services. We do user research, we do user experience design, we do user experience evaluation, but we also then do the full stack development, with a philosophy of user-centered design completely in place.
It's bringing together both of your personal journeys with regard to UX,
Absolutely.
software and research,
Exactly.
which is really interesting.
Yeah.
With that, I know that the Monkey and River is very close to the UX labs at Tux. What's the relationship, and what offering does UX labs offer as well?
Yeah,
How can maybe other people working within UX in Pretoria or South Africa take advantage of that?
So the University of Pretoria, we work and research within the University of Pretoria. They have the facilities, the equipment, to do anything that you can think of in the field of UX, and they have done so since Elian started here, years ago. What we've done is through our research, we've extended and made sure that any of the methods, the services, and so on that we produce are science-based. So there's some form of partnership that is established between us and the UX lab, where we provide the expertise, the experience, the hands, the people to perform the work, carry out the work, whereas the university is like our scientific grounding, if I can call it that. So we continue to work with the university to ensure that our offerings are science-backed, that they are rigorous, that we don't just bring in our own opinion into our processes. And of course then the university's facilities, we also work closely together with them to make sure that the facilities up to scratch, so that they can do the most state-of-the-art research. And then we also obviously use the facilities to do a lot of our lab work.
Are other companies within Pretoria and South Africa, are they able to take advantage of those facilities?
So the facilities are open to be hired out. So just because we have a relationship with the UX lab here doesn't mean that we're the only ones that should. Our vision as a company and as the UX lab is, in totality, we want to advance this idea or advocate for this idea of user-centered design. It's far bigger than our profit motive in our company or anything like that. We establishing a degree in HCI because we want people to go out there that understand how to evoke or orchestrate positive user experiences. That all adds to the greater good in that sense. So we're establishing the degree through our work as a company. We try to help other companies to deliver positive user experiences through the experience that we've picked up. Through the lab, we try. The university is trying to establish a space that people can come around and talk about UX and think about UX and come up with new methods to make UX better. So we kind of attacking this thing from multiple angles and seeing where it leads us. But one thing that all of us that are involved shares is this idea that technology needs to be responsibly designed and designed in mind of the people that have to use it. We cannot live in a future where that doesn't happen, because technology is forming a too important part in our lives. It has such a big role in shaping our reality that we can't not think of this.
UX across education, business and research.
Right.
Jacques, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. If people want to find out more about you, about what Monkey and River's offerings are, some of your research, how to get in touch with you directly, how would you recommend they go about doing that?
All right, so they can hit me up with at my email address is jacques.brosens@up.ac.za. I'm sure you'll be able to link it in. I'm on LinkedIn, so they can hit me. They can contact me there.
Cool.
We've got our Monkey and River Facebook page. We're on Twitter and on LinkedIn. Okay. So our company is available on those social media platforms. And they can also contact the Department of Informatics at the University of Pretoria should they want to get in touch with the lab.
Okay. Jacques, thank you so much for making the time. I really enjoyed this.
Sure.
I'll chat to you soon.
Cool. Thanks.
Legend. Hell yeah.